I want to start somewhere honest this morning. And my notes are going to trip me up because I don't have a pulpit, all my stuff. So we're just going to go. Are you ready? Let's go. So every year, Easter, right? I've been a pastor a long time. Easter arrives with a lot of production. It's like the biggest Sunday of the year. Only second to Mother's Day. Moms, you have some power. But there's a lot of production around it. The flowers, extra music, the extra chairs. There's extra chairs today. People who haven't been in a while, not to cast shade on you, but, there's people that only come for Easter. And that's okay. Families are dressed up. I know mine is. We're all wearing similar colors on the color wheel. Today feels significant. And it is. But I want to be really direct with you today. Because I think Easter, more than any other Sunday, is one where we are at the most risk of celebrating something without understanding what we are celebrating. It's not how good your mama's cooking is at lunch, or that you got a new pair of shoes, or a pretty dress, or your mom made you brush your hair. When we can say, He is risen, and mean absolutely nothing by it, when we can sing the songs, go through the motions, feel the feelings, shake the hands, eat the lunch. My mom usually makes lamb. Good job, Mom. But when we walk away, we're completely unchanged. Because it was just another Sunday. I don't want that for you today. At all. So I want to strip away the holiday layer, the Walmart side, and get down to the actual thing. That's why the cross has center stage today. The raw Easter. The thing that either changes everything in your life or changes nothing at all. And I'm going to be honest with you, there is no middle ground. There's no gray area in this. So here's the question. Who is this man? Who is the man that we're standing here talking about, that we've worshiped? Who is the man that bore the cross? Because the answer to that question determines whether today is a holiday or a turning point. So who Jesus is matters. You see, John begins his gospel in a very specific way. He doesn't start with genealogy. He doesn't start with the birth narrative. He starts before time existed. In the beginning was and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. Through him all things were made. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. John 1 through 3. And I added verse 14. You see, in Greek, John uses the word logos for word. The logos, or logos, was the rational principle behind all reality. That's heavy. The ordering force of the universe. That's the Word. The thing that kept chaos from consuming everything was the Word. And John walks into that conversation and says, you've been right about Logos. But here's what you got wrong. It's not an idea. It's not a force. It's a person. And he just moved into that neighborhood and dwelt there. But John was also a Jewish man. And in Hebrew, the closest word to logos is dabar. And dabar means a word that does something when it's spoken. I love this. When God speaks in the Hebrew scriptures, creation responds. Darkness moves, water gathers, and life appears. And John says that is who Jesus is. He's not a good teacher with interesting ideas. He's not a religious symbol. He is not a figure of history we admire from a far distance. He is the Word through whom everything that exists came into existence. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Colossians 1:16 through 17. In him all things hold together. That means right now, in this moment, the atoms in your body are staying structured because of him. I wish Sam was in here. He would nerd out on that. The earth is in its orbit because of him. The fact that there is something rather than nothing is because of him. And then there's what Jesus said about himself. 7 times in John's gospel, Jesus uses the phrase, I am, in a specific way. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. Now, if you know your Old Testament, you know that why that phrase matters. In Exodus 3, Moses asked God, who should I say sent me? What was it? God says, tell them, I am has sent you. The divine name, pure, self-existent being, that is God. He says, I exist because I exist. Nothing made me, nothing sustains me. I simply am. That's our God. And Jesus looks at his audience and says, I am. Woo. In John chapter 8, verse 58, he says it most plainly, before Abraham was born, I am. The crowd picks up stones because they understood exactly what he was claiming. Not a prophet, not a great teacher. The self-existent God who spoke to Moses from a burning bush. So when that man walks into Jerusalem that week, when that man sits in the upper room and breaks bread, when that man kneels in a garden and sweats drops of blood, asking if there was any other way, that's not just a good man making a sacrifice. That is the I am of the universe, choosing out of love to submit himself to what he was about to go through. Today we're going to look at what he overcame, part 2. I need to talk about the cross. And I want to be careful here because I think we have sanitized the cross. We wear it around our necks. I do too. We hang it on our walls. We use it as a logo. And sometimes the familiarity of the symbol makes us forget the brutality of its reality. Roman crucifixion was not a form of execution. It was a form of communication. It said, this person is beneath contempt. We're going to end their life in the most public, in the most prolonged, in the most humiliating way possible. And we're going to leave them hanging there so that everyone who walks by understands what happens to people like this. That's what they were saying. You were stripped. You were beaten. You were nailed. You carried the crossbeam through the city. And then you suffocated slowly, because the only way to breathe in crucifixion is to push yourself up on the nails. And eventually, you don't have the strength to do it anymore. Hebrews 12 says Jesus endured the cross, scorning its shame, scorning it, not avoiding it. He walked straight into it. But here's what I want you to understand. The physical suffering was real. But what was happening spiritually on that cross was something even heavier. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, becoming a curse for us. He became that. Galatians 3:13. He became the curse. Every covenant broken. Every act of rebellion, every time humanity looked at God and chose something else. All of it was placed on him. And there is a moment in Matthew 27 that I think this morning we're going to take a moment and just sit with a little more than we normally do. It says, from noon until 3 p.m, darkness came over all the land. And Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Second Corinthians 5:21 says, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us. Not sinful, not a sinner. Sin. He became the thing itself. And the nature of sin is separation from God. That is what sin does. That's its purpose. It fractures the relationship. It puts a barrier between us. And in that moment on the cross, the Son who had existed in perfect union with the Father from before the beginning of time, experienced in his own person the separation that sin produces internally. That cry from the cross is the sound of the universe's greatest love, absorbing the universe's greatest wound. And then there's what happened after. In the Hebrew understanding, Sheol was the realm of the dead, the place of shadow and silence, the final word on human life. When Jesus died on that cross, he did not just experience a human death. He descended into the realm of death itself. He went to the place that had claimed every human being since Adam. And he came out. Not because death released him, because death could not keep him. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Revelations 1:18. He holds the keys. Death didn't surrender peacefully. Death got conquered. The grave thought it had him. The grave was catastrophically wrong. So today, we're going to talk about what we are celebrating. I want to be very clear about what we're actually doing here this morning. We're not here to celebrating a metaphor for hope. We're not celebrating a story that makes spring feel significant. We're celebrating a specific event that happened in a specific place on a specific morning that changed the structure of reality. See, death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. not will give, gives. Present tense. The resurrection, the announcement that the power of death has been broken, not weakened, not challenged, but broken. It changes how you hold suffering. It changes how you carry shame. It changes how you face your own mortality. Because if the grave is not the end of the story, then suffering is not the end of the story, or yours. We're living in a universe where love walked out of the tomb. Man, I know some of you are here today and you're not sure what you believe about all this. Maybe you came because someone invited you. Man, I'm so glad they did. Maybe something in you is still looking and trying to understand, still hoping, still wondering if any of this is real. That is a completely honest place to be. What I want to make sure of is that if you walk out of here today without faith, you at least understand what it is you're walking away from. Because this is not a lifestyle choice. This is not a cultural preference. This is a claim that the God who made everything stepped into his creation, died for it, and came back. And if that is true, it is the most significant thing that has ever happened. This morning, I want to take a look at the response at the tomb. Now, I want to take you to the garden. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed. Could you imagine? That's a massive stone and just rolled. I would be worried. While it was still dark, Mary is not going to the tomb because she expects something. She is going because she loved him. Because when you love someone and they're gone, you go to the place where they are or where they were. You go because grief needs somewhere to put itself. She gets there. The stone is moved. She runs. She gets Peter and the other disciples. They all run back. The two men look in, see the burial clothes, and then they go home. They go home. I'd be like, where's the body? But Mary stays. And I think that matters. Because sometimes the people who get the revelation are not the ones who make the fastest decision. They're the ones who refuse to leave. The ones whose love is stubborn enough to keep standing in front of an empty tomb when everything in them is falling apart. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. She saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." John 20, 11 through 13. They have taken my Lord away. Her grief has no object to cling to. She can't even mourn properly because she doesn't know where he is. At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not realize that it was Jesus. Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." John chapter 20, verses 14 through 15. She sees him, and she doesn't even know that it's him. She thinks he's the gardener. I think there's something worth sitting with right there in that fraction of the story. Sometimes we don't recognize Jesus because we've already decided what category he belongs in our lives. And in her mind, he was dead. She had filed him under dead. So he couldn't be standing there. It wasn't because she didn't love him, because she loved him with all that she was. And love doesn't protect you from reality. And I wonder how many of us are like that. Not because we're faithless, but because we've been hurt enough times, disappointed enough times, prayed enough prayers that seem to go absolutely nowhere, that we've quietly filed Jesus under a category that limits what we expect from him. We still come to church. We still say the words, but somewhere in us, we've stopped expecting him to show up in the middle of our grief. Then he spoke, and Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned toward him and cried out, Rabboni, which means teacher. He says her name. One word, her name, in a voice she knows. And in an instant, everything changed for her. Not a theological argument, not a proof, not a presentation. Her name, in his voice, the resurrection introduces itself personally into her life. The first person Jesus speaks to on the other side of death is a woman who had nowhere else to go and refused to leave anyway. That tells you something about what the resurrection is for. It is not primarily a cosmic proof of divine power, though it is that. It is a person calling your name. He knows your name. Each one of you. Not generally, not part of a group. He knows your name. Your specific name, the one he has known since before you were born. And the question of this morning is whether you're going to recognize his voice when he says your name. You see, there are only two responses. You see, Dallas Willard was one of the greatest spiritual theologians of the last generation. Personal opinion. And he said something that has not left me since I heard it. He said, the response to Jesus is never neutral. You either turn away or you shamelessly fall in love with him. You turn away or you shamelessly fall in love. Those are the two options. I told you, no gray area. You see, turning away doesn't require drama in your life. You don't have to make an announcement to turn your back on Jesus. You don't have to stop going to church or tell anyone that you turned your back on Jesus. You just walk away. Turning away can look exactly like what most people do most Sundays. You hear the message, you feel something, and then life comes back in and fills the space where that feeling was. And by Wednesday, it's like it never happened. Turning away is just a continuing in the direction that isn't toward him. And then there's the other option. Shamelessly falling in love with him. That word shamelessly. I think one of the things that keeps people in the space between these two options is shame. Not necessarily shame about sin, but shame about wanting this to be true. Shame about needing it. We live in a world that considers qualified devotion to be a little embarrassing. Measured skepticism is sophisticated. Guarded distance is intelligent. But wholehearted love, no matter the cost, love that doesn't protect itself, guard itself, love that falls all the way in, that looks reckless. That looks naive. And Willard says, no, it's shameless. Without the protection, without one foot in and one foot out, ready to leave, falling in love with him. You can know everything about Jesus and have never fallen in love with him. You can have the right theology. You can have the right church attendance record. You can know all the answers in all the Bible trivia games and still be looking at a gardener in a garden asking where they put the body. Because falling in love is not an intellectual achievement. It's surrender. It's the moment where what you know about someone becomes who that someone is to you. Where the information becomes relationship. Where the facts become the face. You see, I've been in ministry for a long time, and the thing I keep learning over and over and over again is that there is no version of this that works without the love. You cannot sustain faith on tradition. You cannot sustain the life Jesus calls us to on willpower and religious performance. The only thing that sustains it is actually being in love with Jesus. That's it. Not the idea of him, not the theology of him. The one who says your name in the garden, the one who holds the keys, the one who was dead and is alive forever and ever, seated at the right hand of God. He bore the cross for you to make a decision. The resurrection is asking you to make a decision about a person. Is he who he said he was? Is he the Word who created everything? The same Word who became flesh and died and came back? Is the tomb actually empty? Because if it is, then neutral is not an available option. Admiring from a distance is not available. If the tomb is empty, you turn away or you fall in love. Those are the two choices. That's it. From everything I have seen and known and lived, falling in love with him is the only thing that has ever made sense of any of it. Falling in love with him changed everything. It's not the only thing that makes life easy. The only thing that gives the pain a frame. The only thing that gives the confusion a direction. Love is the only thing that sits in the doubt with you and doesn't move. His name is Jesus. He was dead. He's alive. He knows your name. And the response he's looking for is not an answered altar call. It's your heart. Because you can say something here, then walk out the door and do something else. He's risen. He is risen indeed.